Today's sermon is titled Sitting with Others, Compassion and Equity in Serving Those Affected by the Criminal Legal System, to be delivered by Mary Cronin. Mary Cronin has had a lifelong interest in working with marginalized communities. After high school, for 4 years, she worked in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, with a volunteer organization that provided support for people with addictions and homeless individuals. After receiving her BA at Portland State and her MA at Columbia Teachers College, she moved to the Central Coast in 2014. Mary became a yoga instructor and started to volunteer with the local restorative justice organization, Restorative Partners. Mary now works full-time as the mentor coordinator for Restorative Partners, assisting formerly incarcerated individuals in finding local support. She's also involved with facilitating staff yoga, leading regular meditation, and teaches yoga at the organization's sober living homes. She's also the chapter director for the San Luis Obispo branch of Prison Yoga Project. In March 2021, Mary completed the 300-hour Trauma Center Trauma Sensitive Yoga Facilitator program. In her free moments, she spends her time at the beach, kayaks, runs, cooks fantastic meals, and reads terrible fiction. Mary?
Good morning. Thank you. And thank you for letting me be here with you all today. So in 2016, after the presidential election of 45, I cried for about a week, like many other people who I know in my life. And I started to wonder what I could do to make a difference in my community. I felt very disillusioned and heartbroken, but I felt so much that there was a need, that I needed to give something, that I needed to do something that would encourage other people and help people who were the most marginalized. And it was about a year before I did my yoga teacher training at a local studio here in San Luis Obispo. And one of my fellow students had become involved with a local restorative justice organization called Restorative Partners. So I reached out to him and asked how it was going and how I could get involved. And that summer, I did my basic training with Restorative Partners. And in the fall, I started to enter the San Luis Obispo County Jail on a regular basis, accompanying another yoga teacher as she was teaching a yoga class to the people incarcerated there. And by the winter of the next year, I was teaching my own class. So once a week on Tuesdays, I would go in and teach a group of women who were in probably the lowest form of the jail at that time. And it was amazing. And I felt like I was able to connect with them and be with them and see them. And I didn't know a lot about the criminal legal system at the time. I knew it was not great. I knew there were a lot of issues. I knew there were a lot of problems. But my understanding and how to actively deal with that was not, it wasn't really anything. But I loved working with these women, and I loved being a support to them and helping them to build a little bit of community. And it's so interesting when you are volunteering every week. I sometimes think people are used to volunteer work at Christmas. They're used to it at Thanksgiving. They're used to it during the holidays. But when you're a regular volunteer for an organization, you go when you're tired, and you go after your 9-to-5 job, and you go when you're having problems with your own family, and you're committed to it. And friends of mine kept saying how they thought it was so strange that after a year, I was still involved in this weird thing, teaching yoga at the jail. And after 2 years, I was still going and teaching yoga at the jail. And I was very lucky. At that time, I was able to participate in some training with another organization called Prison Yoga Project. They specialize in trainings and getting programs in jails and prisons. And they eventually invited me to be a part of their program here. They were starting a program at the CMC, at the California Men's Colony, to have a yoga class here, and or 2 yoga classes a week. And I became their area coordinator. I've moved up since then, which is nice. And I would go in with a few other yoga instructors and teach a class of 20 something men twice a week and teach them yoga. And a number of these men are lifers, the majority, people who might not ever get out of the prison. And it was so amazing to be able to have that experience with them. And shortly after I was working with PYP, I was a position open with Restorative Partners, and I was able to apply, and I became the mentor coordinator for our program. And our program, it's the program I coordinate is a matching program, and Kat is involved with us, which is lovely. We are able to match people who have recently left incarceration and match them with a volunteer in the community. Because when you leave incarceration, you do not have a lot going for you. Maybe the people that you spent time with in your past life are no longer good for you. Or because of your own bad choices, you no longer have those relationships. And through our mentorship program, we have been able to reduce return to jail recidivism by 13%. And it's really wonderful to see people who have a mentor, who have a volunteer who works with them long-term for a year and continues in friendship with them to help them to reach their goals and to do things with them and to be a friend and a support and a guide for them. So along with that, I'm part of a team that facilitates trainings. We do, and we'll talk a little bit about this in my slideshow. We run community workshop trainings to train people in our communities, like yourselves, who want to get involved and who want to make a difference in the community, or even just to know what's going on and to know what is happening in the criminal legal system. So I'm part of that. I also run yoga in our sober living homes. I'm actually starting a new program tomorrow at our parolee house that I'm very excited about for men who have left prison. I also teach yoga to our staff. I lead meditation. I do a lot of things. And then this year, I was able to take a training to become a trauma-informed yoga instructor, which has been amazing and changed my life. And I love that in my work, I come from a yoga perspective. And that means that we do not fix people. We do not try to put them back together. We sit with them. We are there to be with them and to give people a choice to take control of their own lives. And it's so amazing to see when a person who has been incarcerated and is able to move into a place of freedom and being able to know that they are not branded by the worst day of their life. And we've all had bad days. We've all had the worst day. Not all of us were caught. And for a lot of our people who are coming out of incarcerated, they were caught on their worst day. So if we can go into the slideshow. So I just want to talk a little bit. I'm just going to run through our basically what Restorative Partners is, what we do, what's restorative justice, and a few of the tools that we use. And this is a great little advertisement for our community workshops. We are right now taking signups for August if anyone is interested. We have an amazing program with our staff. So this is just a little taste of it. So introductions, terms to know, who we are, what we do, what's restorative justice, intersections with racial justice, which I know is important to y'all, and the social discipline window. So if we can go into the next slide. So some terms to know. This is really important because so many people use the term jail and prison interchangeably, and it's not. Very, very different places. A jail is a transit center. It's typically operated by the counties to hold everyone who is arrested until they are sentenced, transferred to state prison, or released in one way or another. Bail, time served, acquitted, etc. This is where if you were driving down the street and you got arrested, this is where you would go. California's counties operate several types of jails, including court holding facilities, temporary holding facilities, and long-term facilities. Since realignment, AB 109 began in October 2011, county jails have had more oversight over most non-serious, non-violent, non-sexual felons and parolees who violate their parole. This is where RP comes in. The main clients that I work with through our mentor program are people who are AB 109, and that's considered to be mid to high risk people, but they fall a lot in this non-serious, non-violent. Majority is drug crimes, and that's who we work with. The San Luis Obispo County Jail is run by the Sheriff's Department. So you can go to the next slide. Prison, an institutional facility under the jurisdiction of the state or federal government where convicted persons serve longer sentences. People who have been found guilty of breaking a state law are usually sent to state prison. People who have violated federal laws are typically sent to federal prison located somewhere in the United States. So I think it's, and then there's a juvenile hall, a place of confinement for youth. The SLO County Juvenile Hall is run by the probation department. I think it's very interesting that you can go down the one and there is the prison on one side, the jail on the other, and the juvenile hall next door to that. And it's kind of like this whole little annex of area. And I lived in San Luis Obispo for many years and never thought about it. It was never in my consciousness. It was something that was there, but I didn't actively engage with it. And it's very easy to not know our neighbors and to not take responsibility for our neighbors. But this is where everyone is. So the CMC is, like I said, I spent before COVID, I was going in at least once a week teaching yoga there with Prison Yoga Project. And I have to say for a prison, they have some great programs, and the people who are coming out of there, they are doing really well with what they have. They do seem to be rehabilitating people, which is awesome. And they're given a lot of opportunities for training and for mentorship and for things like that. So the juvenile hall I have worked with in the past. Currently, the juvenile hall is the only place that Restorative Partners is able to get into post-COVID. We are hoping that we're going to be able to reestablish our programs in the jail very soon. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Some terms to know, continuing. We try to use person-first language. So using language that addresses the person first rather than their condition or situation. So instead of saying inmates, we say people who are incarcerated. Instead of saying an addicted person, we say a person with an addiction. A human being who has suffered so much that he or she finds in drugs or some other behavior a temporary escape from that suffering. So we really try to do this so that we're not labeling people, but we're respecting the human spark in them. We're respecting the divine. We are respecting who they are and not saying, well, this is just who they are. And that's really, really important to us. And for me in my personal life, also in my work life, I am continually gently correcting people instead of inmates. This is what we say. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Criminalization, the process by which behaviors in individuals are transformed into crime and criminals. Previously, legal acts may be transformed into crimes by legislation or judicial decision. By defining activities associated with certain groups as criminal, those groups themselves come to be seen and treated as dangerous, often justifying extreme and subtle violence against those people. The process does not happen in a vacuum, but rather is a strategy in the continued oppression of marginalized groups, people of color, the poor, women, youth, LGBTQIA, and the disabled. So you can go to the next slide. According to the International Institute for Restorative Practices, IIRP, restorative practices is an emerging social science that studies how to strengthen relationships between individuals as well as social connection within communities. Though new to the social sciences, social practices has deep roots within Indigenous communities throughout the world. Restorative justice is a way at looking at criminal justice that focus on repairing the harm done to people and relationships rather than punishing offenders. This does not mean that offenders should not be held accountable, simply that the needs of those harmed should be centered in the conversation. Mutuality, an approach that acknowledges that we as humans are more alike than we are different. Mutuality requires everyone to participate equally in our transformation, collectively and individually. Kinship, the idea and practice that we are all connected to each other in a relationship and that we belong to one another. This is something that Father Boyle, whose quote I chose, talks about a lot. And it's that whole idea of who are our neighbors and looking at the jail and looking at the prison and looking at juvenile hall, keeping that in mind that we belong to one another and we are responsible for one another as well. And then the circle process is the use of the circle to invite discussion, connection, resolution, healing, and the building of community, among other things. And something that we do in Restorative Partners is when something happens, we circle. We meet as a staff in a circle. And when things happen that are disturbing to us and to our world, when a staff person might leave, or when the active shooting took place a couple weeks ago, just 2 blocks from our office, we had a circle process to talk about it. We also offer circle processes for our volunteers when things happen in our world where there might be disruption in dealing with COVID, things like that. We also use this to deal with things in our sober living homes, and we're starting to be more active in doing that with our restorative justice facilitators. So you can move to the next. All right, so getting into who we are. We are a nonprofit organization in San Luis Obispo County. We are only in SLO County. We are not a national organization. Our mission is to transform lives impacted by crime through healing services and relationships. So this can be anyone who is in that circle of who has been impacted by crime. So moving on. What we do. Restorative Partners provide services and programs for those in custody and for those released from the SLO County Juvenile Hall, Jail, and Honor Farm in California state prisons. Our restorative justice approach focuses on mind, body, and spiritual transformation, incorporates trauma-informed care, addresses responsibility and accountability, and offers accompaniment through re-entry mentorship. The goal of RP's work is to reduce violence and lower recidivism by providing a continuum of care from incarceration through reincorporation into the community. So what we are trying to do, and we were able to do this until COVID happened, is we are in the jail. We are with people as they leave the jail, and we are there after to really be able to help people as they reestablish their lives and becoming a productive members of the community again. So this is what we do. We have done for in custody programs. We have volunteer programs, or have had, that focus on art, yoga, meditation, spiritual counseling, guitar, chess, gardening, creative writing, AA and NA, juvenile hall tutoring, birthday celebrations, and book club. We also offer facilitated programs. So these are programs that our restorative justice educator, Ginny, runs, where she is working with a group. And they meet every week for 26 weeks, and they go through a curriculum that she runs. Thinking for a Change, Restorative Justice Process Group. We also have Alternatives to Violence Project, which is another organization that we partner with, and they run their program. So just so y'all know, our volunteer programs, like I said, right now, we are post-COVID, or as we're moving past COVID, we currently are starting to volunteer in the jail again, or the juvenile hall. We've been back there for a month. We also have ping pong, which is great for the kids. We do religious services as well, or we host services, and getting really involved so that these kids have support. We are hoping to get back in the jail soon, and we have not heard from them yet, but we're hoping that we're going to be able to start programming again there. You can move to the next slide. So re-entry programs, mentorship program, which is my program, which I think is amazing. Culinary training and internship program. These are for our clients who want to work in foods, want to work in food service, want to work in a kitchen. And we have an amazing program that one of our staff has been running that really has helped them in changing their lives. Thinking for a Change, which I said our staff person Ginny runs. Parolee outpatient treatment, reentry system navigation, sober living homes in partnership with SLO County Drug and Alcohol. We have 5 homes. We have a home in Los Osos, which is a women's home. We have another home in Los Osos, which is a men's home. Lionheart Place is our parolee houses for men, and they are 2 homes that are next to each other. And then we have Anna's home in North County, which you might have seen on the news the other week. We had a few of our women who were part of the GRID program and started to, or they were able to put solar panels on the house, which is awesome. And then they're also being trained to install solar panels, so they'll be able to continue that and have employment opportunities, which is wonderful. And then we also do circles and conferencing at the homes. Another thing that we just started doing, which isn't on this slide, we have a therapy program for our clients where we have amazing volunteer therapists who volunteer their time an hour a week to be able to meet with one of our clients and to be able to give that time to help them in their adjustment. And what I love about our reentry programs, it's not just one thing that helps people. I have a mentee and I was with him while he was going to court. This is about 6 months ago. And he was saying that it isn't just through his mentor that he is doing okay. It's because he has mentorship, he has therapy, and he took our anger management class. So it's really being able to look at somebody and seeing what needs to be provided for them and what can support them and what can help them. So you can go on to the next. In the community, Superior Court post-file misdemeanor diversion program and the DA's office pre-file misdemeanor diversion program. We are just starting this. My supervisor, Vivian, has spent a lot of time meeting with the local courts along with Sister Teresa, our executive director, to be able to really make a difference in the courts. And this is where restorative justice can do awesome things. So somebody who has had issues, somebody who's been arrested, they could sit down and figure out what kind of a program will work for them so that they do not go to jail. And it's still holding them accountable. It's still, they have to do a lot of work to be successful in these programs, but it's really a restorative justice approach to looking at the legal system instead. Education and training for partners. We work with a lot of nonprofit partners in the area, and this assists them in knowing what we do and to be able to better partner with them. We've done trainings with RISE. We have done trainings with TIMA. We work together because we all need each other. And that also runs into collaboration with service providers and other nonprofit organizations. There are 900 nonprofits in the Central Coast, not counting churches and religious places. So it's a lot of people that we can work with. So we can move on. So this is what I was talking about, restorative conferencing. What else are we doing? A structured facilitating meeting between those who caused harm, those who were harmed, and others who were impacted by the situation. A trained facilitator leads a process to discuss the incident, any harm that was disciplinary or justice processes or a supplement to these processes. So we have 2 staff right now who do this, Vivian and Jenny, and they're awesome. In the future, we actually want to train volunteers to do this. So if anybody is interested, this is a great way to get involved with RP. IIRP says conferences provide one and the needs of those involved. The goals of a restorative conference are accountability, healing, and restoration. They can be used in lieu of traditional victims and others with an opportunity to confront the offender, express their feelings, ask questions, and have a say in the outcome. Offenders hear firsthand how their behavior has affected people. So this can look like somebody who has caused the harm, someone who has had the harm done to them, sitting in a circle with somebody who is a facilitator and talking about how this hurt them, what happened, what can they do to be better. And it's an amazing process, and it's really beautiful when you see that this can work. Okay, the next slide. All right. We do have time for this if the video can work. I just wanted to give a little tip on what is restorative justice, because I'm using all this language and I want to make sure that everybody understands it.
More than half of victims of violent crime don't even call the police in the first place. They prefer nothing to everything we have to offer. The vast majority of crime survivors' pain goes unhealed. What the existence of restorative justice means is that we can no longer pretend we don't know what else to do. As a country, we're really good at punishment. It's passive, it doesn't require people to act, to think, it certainly doesn't require them to change. When we lock people up, we excuse them from their responsibility to answer for what they've done. Restorative justice is a process to hold them accountable. It's a tool. People take turns answering questions like what happened, what needs arise, whose responsibility is it to meet those needs, and how is that person going to do it? It requires someone to take responsibility, to repair things as much as possible, and to never commit that harm again. This isn't about feeling sorry, it's about doing sorry. Things like go to school, get a job, pay restitution, apologize, do community service. Restorative justice practices have been used to address low-level infractions like vandalism, up to addressing the impact of murders on the surviving family members. Restorative justice processes are first and foremost about meeting the needs of people who are hurt. Sometimes the person who can make the greatest contribution to a survivor's healing is the person who harmed them. To come through trauma, we need answers to our questions. To say, my life was never the same after you hurt me like that. Crime survivors want the most safety possibly available. So if incarceration actually produced safety, we would have the safest country in human history. That's not what we have. The core drivers of violence are shame, isolation, an inability to meet one's economic needs, and exposure to violence. And we bake those into prisons to try and keep people from committing further violence. Incarceration exposes people to exactly the things that increase the likelihood that they'll go on to harm others. People who are hurt deserve a process that will help them heal. People who are responsible for crime have an obligation to be accountable for that. All of us deserve responses to crime that actually make us safer. Our current criminal justice system doesn't deliver any of those, and restorative justice at its best delivers them all.
Okay. So looking at this, I love that video. I think it's amazing. It's super short and it really explains the importance of restorative justice. And it's not just a word I'm throwing around. This is lifetime likelihood of imprisonment for US residents born in 2001. So it's really interesting since I worked in both the SLO County Jail and also the prison. The majority of the people I've worked with in the jail, both men and women, are primarily white. They look like me. But when I was teaching yoga at the prison for both of the classes, which were two separate classes of 20, 22 men, the majority of the people were brown and black. I think in each class I had maybe 2 white men. And that is a huge reflection on California since it's a California prison. So looking at this little chart, so 1 in 9 of all men will be imprisoned. Looking at white men, 1 in 17. Looking at Black men, 1 in 3 will be imprisoned in their lifetime. And looking at Latino men, it's 1 in 6. And then for women, for all women, 1 in 56 will be imprisoned. For white women, it is 1 in 111. For Black women, it's 1 in 18. And for Latino women, it's 1 in 45. So you can see that there's some issues, and there are definitely some racist issues looking at imprisonment and the way it affects people. So moving on to the next slide. Okay, so this is one of my favorite tools that we work with in RP. A couple of our staff came back from a training to talk about this. This is called the social discipline window, and it's something that we actively try to use in working with our clients and also with our staff. So, so that we are actively using this, and so our volunteers and everybody in our organization. So what usually happens in our justice legal system is it's punitive. So looking at the little window, you do things to people. You screwed up, so this is what is going to happen to you. The other part of that is neglectful. You screwed up, we're going to put you away in a cell and get rid of you, and you are not going to have anything to do with us. And then the other side too is permissive. Sometimes when we're working with our clients, it can just be very easy to just allow things to happen. They didn't know any better. They've been incarcerated for a long time. Just let things go. And and that doesn't help people to learn. And it doesn't help people to be able to be responsible members of our community. And it doesn't help them to grow. So the thing that we're trying to do with restorative justice is do things with people. Not that we're neglecting them, not that we're punishing them, not that we're being overly permissive, but instead it's working with people. And I feel like working with our mentor program, there are so many great examples of that, where instead of filling out somebody's forms to get their driver's license, you are with them as they fill out their forms. You make sure they have their forms, you sit with them, you are a friend to them, you accompany them. And that's what restorative justice is. And that's what we are trying to work out, is not, not neglecting people, but really being there for them and alongside. I like to think of our programs, working with our clients, is coming alongside and really guiding them. So you are being supportive, like it shows in the window, high support, encouragement, and nurturing. Also making sure that you are organized, but not to the point of causing harm. So we can go to the next slide. Oh, and that's it. Feel free to contact us and connect with us. We are on, we have a wonderful Instagram being run by our admin coordinator, who does a great job and keeps up to date about what we're doing. We're on Facebook. Right now, our current fundraiser, and also to build connections with local restaurants and help support them, is the Grilled Cheese Festival is going on, if any of y'all have heard about that. So that's awesome. And we always have a lot happening in the community. So thank you.